Couple things that you need to start off. So the first thing that you should have handy is some paper towel. I'm gonna leave that on the side. Some Q-tips. So this is in regards to some detail, okay? If you want to clean up certain spots that are a little trickier to get with your paper towel. Any alcohol inks. I recommend starting off with Jacquard because they have an alcohol ink starter pack for beginners. These are just some of the colors that Jacquard offers, so you can see that they have a very, very wide range of colors, which is just awesome to get started. So something that you're gonna want, you can't quite see it here, but that is the white. The white is going to create a pastel effect for your colors, so it's actually really important to have. White is a little bit trickier to manipulate in the beginning, so if you don't feel comfortable with it, that's totally okay. But you wanna make sure that you have a range of colors that you are able to just experiment with. So after you get your colors, whatever that is, I would say experiment with maybe 1 or 2 colors. I wouldn't push it further than that just to start off with. You're just trying to get a feel for how the inks flow as opposed to really, you know, finding color combinations. In the beginning, you just want to get that flow. So I'm gonna choose the teal to begin with. And we're gonna hide all of our other colors for now. The next thing you want is your isopropyl alcohol. Now, I have 2 bottles and I always keep 2 different sizes with me. This bottle I tend to keep for bigger projects or if I want to flood my paper. And then I also have a tinier bottle that came with a needle tip to begin with. The tip just broke off, but it's totally okay. And this is for precision, to add some precision to my work, because if you have this and you're adding it, you're trying to add alcohol to just like a small piece of the artwork, it might ruin something that you've already created. So you want to make sure that you have something a little bit more precise for a smaller piece. So you have your alcohol. I use 99.9% isopropyl. Super important that you have a highly concentrated isopropyl alcohol, anywhere from 91 to 99. And I talk about that in my other beginner alcohol ink video where I talk about all the different types of products that I personally use, so you can definitely check that out. Now, in terms of blowing out my ink, I either use my breath, this manual pump, which can give you some pretty cool effects, or I also use a heat gun, and I use this in most of my projects. The thing I like about this heat gun is that it has 3 different settings. So it's a little bit dirty right now, but you can see that it has 1, 2, and 3. So these are the different settings. 1 is super high and hot. I almost never use that unless I'm working on a larger piece, if I'm trying to blow something out really, really quickly, or if I am simply just trying to dry something that is already almost dry. Because if something is not dry and you're putting it on the high heat setting, you will move around the inks a lot and you might ruin the effect that you were trying to get, or maybe like the specific shape. The second one is like a low heat hot setting. So you can hear it's a little lower. It's really hot right now. And then the third one is higher, but it's cool air. So it'll blow around your ink a lot, but it will not dry it up because it's colder air. So those are the things to keep in mind there. The next thing is, if you're purchasing bigger bottles like this, I recommend that you buy some pipettes along with it so that you can pour with precision, okay? Or you can also opt for the needle tip bottles, which I will link in the description below. Again, the needle broke off of this one, but you'll see that they come with like a precision tip, and they're honestly awesome because they're reusable. So if there's a color that you use a lot, I recommend investing in these bottles. If you're just trying to experiment, you can go for the pipettes. I bought like 200 of these, I think, disposable for like $10. I'm just gonna put my ink right in the middle here. The thing I love about Jacquard is that their inks are super concentrated, so you can just drop a few drops of alcohol and just watch what the ink does. It's actually super cool what the ink does, so you can just almost observe it and see what's happening. I'm gonna go in with a little bit of alcohol here. And wherever you put alcohol is where the inks are gonna separate. So you see that I've put the alcohol in here, and then the inks are gonna separate around. So I'm actually gonna go in with this, and then we are gonna see what happens. To avoid these sharp edges, you just want to go in with more alcohol. That's all you got to do, is to soften up the edges. So I've put in more alcohol here to soften up those edges, and then I'm just gonna blow a little bit very lightly to push it and to create that fade. And then I can do the same on that end. The thing that's great about this is pushing the air around, but you're not quite exactly going to dry it with this. This is where the heat gun would come in handy. You can also use your breath to move it around. You can do some concentrated areas. So let's say I want that to be a little bit darker and this to be a little bit lighter. I'm not going to spread around the alcohol ink as much. I might just move it a little bit like that and then keep it in place. I'm gonna go ahead and introduce a second color. What I like to do when I am pairing colors is to go for a complementary color. So because I've chosen teal, I'm gonna go with the pink since they are opposite. And I don't like to drop it right in the middle because I feel like the colors mush. So what I like to do is I like to go around the edges so that the colors blend a little bit, but not too much, so that you can still see their individuality. So you want to make sure that there's alcohol wherever you're pushing out. So if I want to push out this way, I want to make sure that this area is covered with alcohol. And I'm just going to push it out like that. Same on this side. I would also recommend experimenting with blowing harder, blowing softer if you're going to be using your breath. And you can just play around if you want to mix it. You can see what colors that you get. So we're getting kind of like a light lilac sort of color there, right? Where I don't like the harsh edges, I will go in with more alcohol to soften it up. And I can do that completely until it gets to the end of the paper. That way you see no hard edges there. You see where I have put a lot of pressure blowing, there's almost no alcohol there and it creates this almost white effect. The thing to keep in mind with alcohol is it separates your ink, so you might not necessarily want that. That's why I only tend to add alcohol after it's set around the edges, because it helps to break apart the ink, but I wouldn't want to do it in the middle because watch what's going to happen if I just drop some alcohol in the middle. It will separate completely my work, and that's okay if you want to add some effects like that. But if you accidentally drop some alcohol, this is what's going to happen to a piece that, like, maybe there's like a section you liked or whatever, and now, you know, you have that. But what's cool is if I do this and then I blow it around, I could get some really cool effects, right? So I could move around the ink a little bit and create something that I actually end up liking. So you gotta play around with it. This is no one size fits all, honestly, and different things, different techniques will obviously result in different styles. So one thing I am gonna show you here, this is Nara paper that I use. It is a synthetic paper that does not stain. So that means if you take enough alcohol and start to wipe, this will completely come off. Not all papers on the market are like that, but this one's pretty damn good. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do that. So after my demo, this is what I ended up creating. I am going to be showing you how I created this piece in the video to come next week. I really hope you enjoyed that. I really hope you benefited from the tips that I could offer you in this video for alcohol inks for beginners. And if you have any other questions, please shoot me a DM at _DMPaints on Instagram or comment down in the comments below. And I will see you next week. Peace.